The hotel lobby was full of light and life. The tall glass walls let the afternoon sun fall inside and everything shined. The marble floor, the golden frames on the walls, and the giant chandelier that sparkled like stars. Guests in fine clothes walked past, pulling heavy bags or talking quietly in groups. The hotel was famous in the city, the kind of place where world leaders, businessmen, and celebrities stayed whenever they visited. That day, however, the entire atmosphere was uneasy. Staff members stood nervously near the front desk, whispering to each other, their eyes darting toward the man at the center of it all. He was tall, dressed in an expensive dark suit, his shoes polished so well that they reflected the lights above. His sharp eyes moved quickly across the lobby and his face showed impatience. He was Mr. Kenjiro Takahashi, one of the most powerful billionaires in Asia. His wealth stretched across industries, technology, shipping, real estate, and more. Wherever his name appeared, people stood up straighter, because they knew he was not a man who liked waiting. He had flown in that morning on his private jet for an important deal that could change the future of two major companies. The hotel had prepared everything in detail for him. They had decorated the suite with fresh flowers, arranged for chefs from Tokyo to cook his meals, and even rolled out a private red carpet for his arrival. Yet all those efforts now seemed useless, because the hotel had failed in one basic thing. Nobody on the staff could speak Japanese. Mr. Takahashi stood in the center of the lobby, speaking quickly in his native language. His words were sharp, his tone carried authority, and his gestures showed that he expected answers immediately. But no one could reply. The general manager, a tall man in a perfectly ironed suit, smiled politely and bowed slightly, pretending to understand, but his nervous eyes betrayed him. Behind him, receptionists shuffled uncomfortably, whispering, "Do you understand anything? What is he saying?" "We should call someone." The billionaire tapped his cane on the marble floor. Each tap echoed loudly like a clock counting down seconds. His anger was rising. Guests sitting in the cafe corner turned their heads curiously. Some even took out their phones to record the scene. They had heard stories about Mr. Takahashi's temper. He was a man known for firing entire boards of directors if they disappointed him. Now, in this grand hotel, everyone could see his irritation growing. The hotel manager whispered to his assistant, "Quick, call the interpreter." The assistant shook his head nervously. "Sir, the interpreter's flight is delayed. He won't arrive for another 2 hours." The manager's face paled. 2 hours? For Mr. Takahashi, even 2 minutes were too long. The billionaire spoke again in Japanese, this time louder, his tone cutting through the air like a blade. He wanted someone to answer him now, but the staff only stared helplessly. The tension in the lobby thickened. Every second felt heavier. Some guests stood up from their chairs just to watch, whispering to one another. "Why can't anyone here speak Japanese? It's an international hotel, isn't it? This is embarrassing." The murmurs only made the staff more nervous, and then, in the middle of this silence, a clear voice spoke. It was not loud, but it carried confidence. The words came out smooth and polite in perfect Japanese. Everyone froze. The billionaire stopped speaking mid-sentence. His sharp eyes turned to the direction of the voice almost in disbelief. It was not the manager. It was not the assistant. It was not any receptionist or senior staff member. Instead, standing near the side of the lobby, holding a tray of freshly polished glasses, was a young girl. She looked around 19 or 20 years old, dressed simply in neat but modest clothes. Her dark hair was tied back and her eyes were calm. She was not a staff member in uniform. She was the daughter of one of the hotel's maids. She had been waiting quietly for her mother, who worked in the housekeeping department, when she noticed the scene unfolding. At first, she stayed silent, watching the growing panic among the staff. But as the billionaire's voice grew sharper, she realized no one else could help, and so she stepped forward and answered him in his own language, with the grace and respect that Japanese demanded. The lobby fell into complete silence. The billionaire's eyes studied her carefully. His gaze was sharp, but behind it was surprise. He asked her another question in Japanese, slower this time, testing her skill. She replied instantly, her words correct, her pronunciation flawless. There was no hesitation, no mistake. Her tone showed not only knowledge but also respect, the kind that came from true understanding of the culture. The staff stared at her as if she had just performed magic. Some even exchanged shocked whispers. How does she know Japanese? Who is she? She's just the maid's daughter, isn't she? The hotel manager nearly stumbled in his rush to her side. He looked at her with wide eyes. You can speak Japanese? He whispered, almost unable to believe it. The girl gave a small, modest nod. Yes, sir. I studied it. Mr. Takahashi tilted his head, his expression unreadable. He asked her again, this time a more complex sentence, something that even professional interpreters sometimes struggled with. She responded perfectly without missing a word. Her voice was calm, steady, and respectful. For the first time since entering the lobby, the billionaire stopped tapping his cane. His anger did not vanish completely, but it paused, replaced by curiosity. The girl bowed slightly, just as she had learned Japanese people did. Her movements were graceful, not exaggerated, but natural. The billionaire's sharp eyes softened for a moment, though he quickly hid it behind his usual stern look. The hotel staff and the guests could hardly believe what they were witnessing. The billionaire, who had been fuming only moments ago, was now silent, listening closely to this young girl. She had turned the situation around in a way none of the managers or assistants could. She was not wearing a suit, she had no authority, and yet at that moment she held more influence than anyone else in the room. The hotel manager opened his mouth as if to say something but closed it again. He realized that interrupting now would only ruin things. Everyone waited, their eyes fixed on the girl and the billionaire. The only sound in the lobby was the faint hum of the air conditioner and the quiet clinking of glasses on the tray she still carried. Mr. Takahashi finally gave a small nod. His voice, though still firm, was less harsh now. He asked her name. The girl hesitated for a second before replying softly, My name is Aisha. Aisha. A name that no one in the grand lobby would forget after that day, and though no one knew it yet. This small moment, the maid's daughter replying in perfect Japanese, was only the beginning of a story that would soon shake not just the hotel, but the entire city. The lobby remained silent even after Aisha spoke. It felt as though time had paused for everyone present. The billionaire, Mr. Takahashi, continued to stare at her, his sharp eyes fixed as though he were trying to read her entire life story just from her face. People around were waiting for him to explode again, but instead he asked her another question in Japanese. Aisha answered without fear, her tone calm and respectful. She was not only translating his words but also carrying the weight of culture in her sentences. In Japan, how you speak is as important as what you say. Aisha knew this. She spoke in a way that showed humility and confidence together, a rare balance that made her sound almost like a trained interpreter. The hotel manager's heart was still racing. Just a few minutes ago, he was ready to be shouted at, maybe even fired by the billionaire, and now a maid's daughter was saving the entire situation. The receptionist whispered to her colleague, She speaks like she lived in Japan her whole life. But the truth was different. Aisha had never been to Japan. Her mother had worked as a maid in this hotel for many years, and Aisha had spent most of her childhood in the small staff quarters behind the grand building. Books had been her only window to the world. When she was about 15, she found a second-hand Japanese language book in a small street market. Something about the strange characters caught her attention. She borrowed more books, watched Japanese shows online, and slowly, through patience and self-study, she became fluent. Nobody in the hotel knew this except her mother. Now, in this very lobby, that hidden skill was shining like gold. Mr. Takahashi leaned slightly on his cane and asked her what her position was in the hotel. Aisha lowered her eyes respectfully. I am not staff, sir. My mother works here. I was waiting for her. The billionaire's eyebrows rose. The girl standing before him, who had just prevented his anger from boiling over, was not even part of the management team. She was simply the maid's daughter. His lips tightened as though he was hiding a smirk. He was a man who valued talent no matter where it came from. And here was talent shining in the most unexpected corner. He gave her a task immediately. He began speaking in Japanese again, faster this time, instructing her to tell the hotel manager exactly what he wanted. Without a second of hesitation, Aisha translated his words perfectly into English for the manager. She explained that Mr. Takahashi wanted his meeting room prepared within 30 minutes, with special arrangements for tea, screens for presentations, and a quiet environment. The manager blinked rapidly. You understood all of that? Aisha nodded. Yes, sir. He looked at her as if she had grown wings. The billionaire, meanwhile, had already moved to a chair in the lobby, his anger cooling down but his curiosity growing stronger. He studied her the way one studies a rare gem. Guests around whispered louder now. Some said, "She must be hiding that she's a professional interpreter." Others said, "No, she looks too young." A few were already taking secret videos, though none dared to post anything yet, afraid of the billionaire's reaction. For Aisha, it was overwhelming. She had not expected to step into the spotlight. She had only wanted to help, but now she realized she was standing in the middle of the most powerful moment of her life. Her hands were trembling slightly, but she held the tray firmly to hide it. Mr. Takahashi's assistant finally arrived from the airport, rushing into the lobby with his briefcase. He looked around, expecting to find chaos, but instead he saw his boss calmly seated, while a young girl stood beside him, speaking in Japanese. He froze in shock. The billionaire gave his assistant a sharp look and said something short in Japanese. Aisha translated it immediately. "He says you are late." The assistant bowed deeply, embarrassed. He had never seen his employer allow anyone else to translate before. Yet here was a girl, unknown and untrained, handling the situation perfectly. The staff quickly followed Aisha's translations and prepared the meeting room. Within minutes, the crisis that could have ruined the hotel's reputation was under control. The billionaire finally stood, tapping his cane lightly, and walked toward the elevators. Before entering, he turned once more toward Aisha. He spoke slowly, as if testing her again. "Tell them," he said in Japanese, "that this hotel is lucky to have you." Aisha hesitated, unsure if she should translate that compliment. But when she looked up, she saw his eyes waiting. So she turned to the staff and repeated the sentence in English. Everyone gasped softly. Compliments from Mr. Takahashi were rare. The manager's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked at Aisha with both gratitude and confusion. Gratitude because she had saved them. Confusion because he did not know what to do with her now. She was not an employee. She was not trained. Yet she had done something no one else in the entire building could. When the billionaire finally left the lobby, the air seemed to grow lighter. People exhaled. The tension faded. The receptionist smiled weakly. "I think we just witnessed a miracle." But for Aisha, her heart was still pounding. She went back to the side quietly, hoping to melt into the background again. She wanted to return to being invisible, but the staff didn't let her. The manager called her forward. "You saved us today," he said, still in disbelief. "But I must ask, how did you learn Japanese?" Aisha explained shyly, telling them about the books, the shows, the hours of practice alone in her small room. She told them how she fell in love with the language and studied it secretly because she had no money for formal lessons. The staff listened in awe. Some even clapped softly. Her mother, who had just arrived from the service hallway, looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. She had known about Aisha's passion, but she had never thought it would one day save a hotel full of people from humiliation. The manager sighed deeply and said, "You may not be part of the staff, but after today, everyone here will remember your name. And I suspect Mr. Takahashi will not forget it either." That night, word spread quietly among the employees. Some said the billionaire had asked about Aisha even after he left for his suite. Others said his assistant had taken her name down. Nobody knew what it meant, but one thing was certain. The maid's daughter had stepped into the light, and the story was only beginning. The night after the incident in the hotel lobby was one Aisha would never forget. She lay awake in her small room in the staff quarters, her heart still replaying every moment. The sharp voice of the billionaire, the nervous staff, the sudden silence when she spoke. Everything played back like a movie. She had never imagined herself standing in the center of such a scene. She had always been invisible, just a maid's daughter. Yet that day every eye had been on her. Her mother sat beside her on the old wooden bed, still holding Aisha's hand. She was proud, but also worried. "You helped today," her mother whispered. "But Aisha, men like Mr. Takahashi are not ordinary. He is powerful. Be careful. Do not get caught in things that are too big for us." Aisha nodded, but deep inside she knew something had changed. She could not go back to being invisible anymore. She had been seen, and not just by anyone, but by one of the most powerful men in the world. The next morning, when Aisha walked through the back entrance of the hotel to bring her mother lunch, she noticed how different everything felt. Staff members who once barely looked at her now greeted her with smiles. Good morning, Aisha. You were amazing yesterday. Even the strict head of housekeeping gave her a small nod of respect. But it wasn't just the staff. Guests, too, seemed curious. Some whispered when she passed by, recognizing her as the girl who had spoken to the billionaire in Japanese. A few even asked quietly, "Are you really fluent?" She answered modestly and tried to move on quickly, but it was clear she could no longer blend into the shadows. Later that day, the hotel manager called her into his office. He was still in disbelief about what had happened. He thanked her again and then, after a long pause, asked, "Would you consider working for us officially? Not as housekeeping, but as a translator or assistant. We could use someone like you." Aisha's eyes widened. She had never thought such an opportunity would come. But before she could answer, a knock came at the door. It was Mr. Takahashi's assistant. His expression was serious and his voice carried weight. "Mr. Takahashi wants to see the girl." The manager froze, unsure how to respond, but Aisha's heart skipped a beat. She followed the assistant quietly, her steps light but her mind heavy with questions. Why would the billionaire want to see her again? They led her to the top floor, where the presidential suite was. The doors opened to a room larger than any house she had ever seen. Golden curtains hung tall, a piano sat near the window, and expensive art covered the walls. Mr. Takahashi sat by the window sipping tea, his cane resting beside him. He looked up as she entered, his eyes sharp but calm. "Sit," he said in Japanese. Aisha bowed slightly and sat, keeping her hands neatly on her lap. For a long moment he did not speak. He simply studied her. It was the kind of look that made most people shrink, but Aisha held her calm. Finally he asked, "Who taught you Japanese?" Aisha replied softly, "No one, sir. I learned it myself. From books and shows." The billionaire raised an eyebrow. "Self-taught?" He leaned back in his chair. "Most people cannot reach this level even with teachers." Her cheeks warmed, but she only bowed again. "I loved the language. I practiced every day." He tapped his cane lightly on the floor. "Do you know why I was angry yesterday?" She hesitated. "Because no one understood you, sir. And your time was being wasted." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Correct. I do not like wasting time. Time is more valuable than money. But yesterday, because of you, I did not waste it. You gave me something priceless." Aisha blinked. She had never imagined a billionaire would speak to her like that. He continued, "People around me are trained, polished, educated in the best schools. Yet they fail at simple things. And then here comes a maid's daughter, who speaks my language better than most professionals. Tell me, Aisha, what do you want to do with your life?" Her breath caught. No one had ever asked her that question before. She had always been expected to follow her mother's path, working quietly in the background. Dreams were something she kept locked inside her heart. But now, sitting in front of this man, the words slipped out. "I want to learn more languages. I want to travel. I want to help people understand each other." The billionaire's eyes lit up slightly. He leaned forward. "Good answer. The world is full of walls, but languages are keys. You already hold one key. Perhaps one day you will hold many." The assistant standing nearby looked shocked. It was rare for Mr. Takahashi to speak kindly to anyone outside his business circle, let alone a maid's daughter. After a pause, the billionaire said, "I have an important meeting tomorrow with partners from Japan. I want you to be present. You will translate for me until my official interpreter arrives." Aisha's eyes widened. "Me? But sir, I am not trained." He raised his hand to stop her. "You are more than trained. You have talent. Do not doubt it." She nodded slowly, her heart racing. The next day came quickly. Aisha wore her cleanest clothes, simple but neat. Her mother hugged her tightly before she left.
"Be strong," her mother whispered.
"This is bigger than us, but I believe in you." In the grand meeting room, businessmen in dark suits sat around a long table. They spoke in Japanese, fast and full of complex terms. Aisha sat near Mr. Takahashi, her hands trembling at first, but as the words flowed, she found her rhythm. She translated with clarity, her voice steady, her tone precise. The Japanese guests looked at her with surprise, nodding at her respectful manner. Mr. Takahashi listened carefully, occasionally glancing at her with approval. The meeting, which could have been full of confusion, moved smoothly because of her. Even when the interpreter finally arrived halfway through, the billionaire waved him aside and allowed Aisha to continue. By the end of the day, Deals were signed, agreements made, and everyone left satisfied. As they walked out, one of the Japanese partners said softly, "This girl, she is special." Aisha's face turned red, but Mr. Takahashi only gave a small nod. When the room was empty, he turned to her. "You have proven yourself. Remember this day, Aisha. It is only the beginning." Her heart pounded. She realized her life was changing step by step. The girl who once carried trays quietly in the background was now sitting at tables where billion-dollar deals were made. And though she was grateful, she could not shake the feeling that this was only the start of a much bigger test, one that would demand courage she had never known she had. The days after the meeting felt like a dream for Aisha. She went from being almost invisible in the hotel to someone everyone wanted to know. Staff members who had never spoken to her before now smiled warmly whenever she passed by. Some even asked her to teach them a few Japanese phrases, curious about her talent. Her mother walked a little taller too, proud that her daughter had done something so unexpected, but Aisha herself remained humble. She still helped her mother in the evenings, still carried trays or polished glasses when needed. Yet inside, she felt the shift. She was no longer the quiet girl waiting in corners. She had been noticed not only by the hotel but also by Mr. Takahashi himself. The billionaire's assistant soon came to her again with another message. "Mr. Takahashi wants you in tomorrow's lunch meeting." Aisha's heart raced. She nodded politely, though she was nervous inside. Each time she stood by the billionaire, the pressure grew heavier. She was not just translating words, she was standing at the bridge of two worlds, carrying the weight of billion-dollar conversations on her shoulders. At the lunch meeting, the atmosphere was different from the previous one. It was not only Japanese partners this time. There were also local business leaders and international guests. Everyone came prepared to impress the billionaire. They wore expensive suits, carried detailed presentations, and spoke with practiced confidence. Yet as soon as Mr. Takahashi began speaking, all eyes turned once more to Aisha. She translated quickly, her voice clear. Whenever someone spoke in English, she converted it into Japanese. When Mr. Takahashi replied, she carried his words back into English. She noticed how people leaned in, surprised that the billionaire trusted this young girl instead of a professional interpreter. Midway through the meeting, one of the local businessmen smiled politely at her and asked, "Miss, may I know, what is your official position with Mr. Takahashi?" The question caught her off guard. She hesitated. Before she could answer, the billionaire himself spoke in Japanese. His words were strong and his eyes fixed on the man who had asked. Aisha translated carefully. "He says my position is not important. What matters is that I deliver results." The room went quiet. The businessman looked embarrassed while others nodded, impressed. Mr. Takahashi's statement was clear. He valued her no matter her title. That afternoon, after the meeting ended successfully, the billionaire called Aisha aside. "Do you know why I allow you to translate instead of professionals?" She lowered her eyes respectfully. "Because I try my best, sir?" He shook his head slightly. "Because you listen. Many people know words, but they do not listen. You listen not only to language, but also to tone, to respect, to culture. That is rare." Her heart warmed at his words. She had always believed listening was as important as speaking, but no one had ever recognized it before. Over the next week, Aisha was called again and again to assist at different events. She accompanied Mr. Takahashi during private dinners, short press talks, and even while he met government officials. Each time she held her composure, translating carefully, never allowing nerves to break her focus. Word began to spread beyond the hotel. Journalists whispered about the mystery girl who stood beside the Japanese billionaire. Some speculated she was secretly part of his company. Others thought she was a relative. But no one knew the truth, that she was simply the maid's daughter, discovered by accident in the middle of a hotel lobby. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Aisha found herself walking through the quiet hotel garden. The lights glowed softly, and the sound of the fountain filled the air. She finally allowed herself to breathe. But then she heard footsteps behind her. It was Mr. Takahashi. He was alone without his assistant. He walked slowly, leaning slightly on his cane. For a moment, Aisha panicked, unsure if she should bow or step aside, but he gestured for her to sit on the bench. They sat in silence for a while, the sound of water calming the air. Finally, he spoke in Japanese, his tone softer than usual. Aisha, do you know why I value people like you? She shook her head. Because you remind me of myself when I was young. I was not born rich. I started with nothing. People ignored me, laughed at me. But I studied, I worked. I never wasted time. And one day people noticed. That is why I recognize the fire in you. It is the same fire I once had. Her eyes widened. She had never thought of him as anything other than powerful and untouchable. To hear that he too had struggled made him feel suddenly human. He continued, Your mother cleans rooms in this hotel, yet you stand here bridging worlds. Do not let anyone tell you what you cannot be. Your background does not define your future. Tears welled in Aisha's eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. She bowed deeply. Thank you, sir. The billionaire nodded and stood slowly. One day, Aisha, you will leave this hotel. You will see the world. And when that happens, remember this. Talent must never be hidden in the shadows. As he walked away, Aisha felt her life shifting once more. His words lit a flame inside her that nothing could extinguish. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A journalist managed to sneak into the lobby, trying to take photos of her alongside Mr. Takahashi. The hotel security quickly stopped him, but the story still began to leak outside. Articles appeared online with titles like, Who is the girl beside the Japanese billionaire? And Mysterious young translator shocks business world. When Aisha saw the news, her heart raced. She had never wanted attention. She had only wanted to help her mother and follow her quiet passion for languages. But now she realized she was becoming part of something much larger. Her mother held her hand gently. This is not easy, Aisha. Fame can be dangerous. But perhaps it is your path. The hotel manager soon called her in again. He looked uneasy. Aisha, the outside world is asking questions. Reporters want interviews. Some people even think you are the billionaire's secret relative. What should we tell them? Aisha stayed quiet for a moment, then said softly, Tell them the truth. I am just the maid's daughter who loves languages. But deep inside, she knew things were no longer simple. The world was watching, and Mr. Takahashi's interest in her was only growing. And somewhere inside her, hope and fear walked side by side. Hope for the doors opening before her, fear for what price might come with stepping through them. The following week was unlike anything Aisha had ever experienced. She was no longer just the quiet girl in the staff quarters. She had become the center of whispers, attention, and curiosity. Guests stopped her politely to say they had read about her online. Staff members treated her differently, some with admiration, others with envy. Her life, once ordinary and hidden in the hotel's shadows, had changed in a way she never imagined. One morning, as she was helping her mother fold laundry in the staff room, a knock came at the door. It was Mr. Takahashi's assistant again. His expression was serious but respectful. Mr. Takahashi would like to see you in his suite. Now. Her mother froze. She held Aisha's hand tightly, her eyes full of worry. Be careful, she whispered. Aisha nodded, took a deep breath, and followed the assistant. Inside the suite, the billionaire was waiting by the window, looking out at the skyline. He turned slowly when she entered. His sharp eyes studied her as though weighing a decision. Then in Japanese he spoke, Aisha, I have something important to ask you. She bowed lightly, her heart racing. Yes, sir? He leaned on his cane, his voice calm but firm. I want you to come with me to Tokyo. The words hung in the air. Aisha's eyes widened. She had never traveled outside her city, let alone another country. Tokyo? She repeated softly. Yes, he said. You have proven yourself here. You listen, you understand, and you translate with respect. I want you to continue this work with me. Not just here, but abroad. I will give you training, opportunities, and a life far bigger than this hotel can offer. Her hands trembled slightly. The thought of leaving everything she knew, her mother, the staff quarters, her small world, was overwhelming. But so was the thought of seeing Japan, the country whose language she had studied so passionately. She finally found her voice. But sir, my mother, he interrupted gently. She will be cared for. You have my word. But you, Aisha, cannot remain hidden. You have a gift, and gifts must be used. Tears welled in her eyes. She bowed deeply. Thank you, sir. I need to think. The billionaire gave a small nod. Think carefully, but do not take too long. Opportunities do not wait forever. That night, Aisha sat with her mother under the dim light of their small room. She explained everything. Her mother listened silently, then held her daughter's hands tightly. "I'm afraid to let you go," she admitted softly. "But I know you were born for more than these walls. If this is your chance, you must take it. Do not worry about me. My pride will be seeing you fly." Aisha hugged her mother, tears streaming down her face. She realized her mother had sacrificed everything to give her even the smallest opportunities. And now it was her turn to honor those sacrifices. The next morning, she returned to Mr. Takahashi's suite and bowed deeply. "Sir, I will go with you." A rare smile flickered across his face. "Good. You will not regret it." From that moment, everything moved quickly. Papers were arranged, tickets booked, and preparations made. The staff of the hotel whispered excitedly, some in disbelief. "The maid's daughter is going to Tokyo with the billionaire. Can you imagine? She must be so lucky." But Aisha knew it wasn't just luck. It was years of quiet study, nights of hard work, and the courage to speak up at the right moment. When the day of departure arrived, the lobby of the hotel was crowded. Staff members gathered to say goodbye. Some clapped, some hugged her, and others simply watched with wide eyes. Her mother stood proudly beside her, her eyes glistening with tears. As Aisha walked toward the waiting car with Mr. Takahashi and his assistant, she turned back one last time. She saw the chandelier sparkling above, the marble floor shining, the same place where everything had started. It felt like a full circle. The lobby where she had once been invisible was now the place where her journey truly began. The flight to Tokyo was long, but Aisha hardly noticed. She looked out the window, her heart racing with excitement and fear. The moment the plane landed and she stepped into Japan, she felt as though she had entered the pages of a book she had studied for years. The signs, the voices, the rhythm of the city, it was all real now. Mr. Takahashi wasted no time. Within days, he introduced her to his team. She was given formal training, not only in translation but also in business etiquette, culture, and negotiations. The work was demanding, but Aisha thrived. She listened carefully, asked questions, and grew quickly. Soon, she was not just translating words, she was bridging worlds. She accompanied Mr. Takahashi to board meetings, press conferences, and even charity events. She met leaders, scholars, and innovators. Many were surprised at first to see such a young woman beside the billionaire, but once they heard her, their surprise turned into respect. Months passed, and Aisha's confidence grew. Letters from her mother kept her grounded. Each night she would read them, reminding herself where she came from. She never forgot the small staff quarters, the long hours her mother worked, and the moment in the lobby when her life changed forever. One evening, after a particularly successful meeting with international partners, Mr. Takahashi called her into his office. His voice was serious but warm. "Aisha," he said, "do you know why I chose you?" She bowed slightly. "Because I speak Japanese, sir?" He shook his head. "No. Because you are not afraid to stand when others remain silent. That is a rare strength. You are not just a translator now. You are a bridge. And the world needs bridges more than walls." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of joy. She realized that her life's path had only begun. She was no longer the maid's daughter standing in the background. She was a young woman standing in the center of the world stage. As she left his office that night, walking through the bright streets of Tokyo, she thought back to that day in the hotel lobby. Nobody had spoken Japanese. The billionaire had been fuming, and she had stepped forward with nothing but courage and a voice. That small act had changed everything, and deep inside she knew this was not just her story. It was her mother's story, too. It was a story of sacrifice, resilience, and the belief that no matter where you come from, if you hold on to your gift and dare to use it, the world will one day listen.